If you are coming over the top, then you need to stop trying to clear your hips in the downswing. In fact, you need to not turn your hips at all. So bear with me. This might sound really counterintuitive because obviously you see every single touring pro getting their hips opened up. We know the kinematic sequence is the hips fire, torso fires, shoulders, hands, arms, and then the club's the last thing to come around. Obviously, we want to do that. But if we don't have the sequence correct and we're trying to fire our hips incorrectly, this is going to make it impossible for you not to come over top of the plane. So what we're going to do is do an anti-hip turn drill to help you start getting under the plane immediately, start coming a little bit more in to out so we can hit this ball solidly on our target line, and also how the game plan we're going to take to where we can start opening up the hips once we have that under control. So let me go ahead and show you what's going on here, why opening up and trying to clear the hips is causing you to come over top of the plane. So let's real quickly go over the plane line. If I draw a line through the hosel of the club up through the base of my elbow, that's going to give me my plane line. If I'm coming down and that club head is over the plane, that's over the top. That would be on this side of the plane. What we want to have happen is that club to shallow out under the plane, be under the plane, and come to the ball from under the plane. The reason why we want to do this is we cannot hit the ball solid on our target line unless that club head is under the plane. If we're coming over the plane, the only way to hit it on our target line is to leave the face open, add loft, and hit side spin, which takes so much energy off the ball. This is why when you come over the top, you're losing so much distance off the tee. I've seen players swing super, super fast and hit it nowhere because they're just glancing across the ball. So what this is doing when you try to clear your hips with incorrect sequencing, when you go to the top and we try to clear our hips, be the first thing to fire, you can see even when I'm demonstrating this, depending on how I do this, it tends to want to bring that club head over top of the plane. I can't tell you how many times I see this on the driving range in lessons with online students where they're trying to fire the hips so hard that it throws everything over the top. So what we have to do when we are in this situation is learn how to, first and foremost, get underneath the plane by eliminating the habit that we've built of trying to fire the hips from the top of the swing. So the first step to this is we are going to eliminate firing the hips. We are going to create a pathway to get underneath the plane line. So again, if we have our plane line, when we go up to the top of the swing, what we are going to do instead of firing the hips and going over the top, we are going to take our closed hips and we are going to move them forward. Again, this is just a drill, a sensation feel to get us under the plane. As you can see, when I close my hips and I do not open them and I just move them forward. So what I want you to do is imagine a laser beam. When you make your hip turn, it's going to be pointing roughly about 45 degrees away from you in this direction. When you go forward, I want that belt buckle still pointing in that 45-degree direction. This is going to create a ton of space for us to come down underneath the plane. Now, if you actually do this correctly, you're going to hit these balls way off to the right, but you're going to hit them off to the right solidly because the club head is going to be coming under the plane. So let me go ahead and demonstrate this for you. When we go up to the top, I'm going to create a ton of space so that I can easily come underneath the plane. So let's take a nice easy swing like that. Okay, so obviously I'm kind of sliding around, but you can see I did 13.7 degrees out to the right. That means that club head came from way inside and went out to the right. So in to out, which is exactly what we're looking for because we're trying to first and foremost eliminate that over the top move, again with that sensation where we're trying to clear the hips way too early in the swing. So what we want to do is that's the first piece. We want to make sure that we can get that club head underneath the plane so that we can eliminate that over the top move. So let's go ahead and do one more. Once I have a good feel for that, I'm going to keep those hips nice and close. Now you can see when I start to add any kind of speed, my hips will start to fire automatically, but it's still got another almost 13 degrees out to the right, eliminating that over the top. Now that we have a feel for being underneath the plane, we are going to slowly stop worrying about keeping the hips closed and allow them to start firing a little bit more naturally. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to maybe do a rehearsal where I feel like the hips stay closed. Now I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to start with those hips closed and allow them to open up naturally. And this is going to allow us to start using our natural firing patterns to fire our hips and arms and everything in a good sequence, but with that club head underneath the plane. So again, I'm going to take another swing here where I feel like everything stays nice and closed. I'm creating that beautiful path where I can come in and hit this ball solidly. But I'm not going to restrict my hips. So you can see that's still I'm starting to tone it down a little bit because the hips fired a little bit more. That was 12 degrees out to the right. Got a nice little push draw out there. And what you're going to see is you'll be able to start allowing those hips to fire more and more and more so that you can start squaring this up. We don't want that severe of an in-to-out path, but we might need to start with that to eliminate the over the top. So you can see there, hips are starting to move. And again, I'm not trying to hold them, but at first I am eliminating that hip rotation so that I can create a path so I can get the feel that I need to start adding those hips in. So the key here is to make sure that you eliminate the hip rotation so that you can throw it in, because what's going to happen, the sequence, is we aren't going to start firing the hips immediately in our mind. We're going to go into transition, and then you can go ahead and fire them like crazy once that club head is shallowed out underneath the plane. So let's go ahead and do one more. So there we go, not too bad, kept it in to out, so you can see right, that one was 8.4. Because I was training that here on camera, I've already kind of grooved that in to out path, but I fired the hips a little bit more, and we're starting to straighten out already. So the key here is make sure that we eliminate hip rotation at first and then slowly start adding it back in so that we can come down from underneath the plane. Now, once we have this underneath the plane moved down, we have to make sure that we're squaring up the club properly, because if we're not, the ball could literally start going anywhere. Now, if I actually start squaring this up properly, then if I do this correctly, I am going to start to get this ball to draw. As you can see, that ball is going to start moving right to left. Very, very important to make sure we square that up. Now, our head instructor and owner, Clay Ballard, has a beautiful lesson called the tennis racket drill that he shows you exactly how to do this. So I highly recommend pairing this up, creating the space with keeping the hips a little bit more closed, working them a little bit more open, and then squaring it up using the tennis racket drill so you have the best of both worlds, coming from underneath the plane with a square club face. You can see that entire lesson. We're going to play a preview of it at the end of this video, that you can see the whole lesson by clicking on the iCard that pops up in the screen or the link in the description below. And let's go ahead and get started.
Good player problems. We're going to talk about shallowing that club shaft out as we're starting down, as we're doing this rotating of the face that we worked on in the last video. As we start this downswing, what you'll see with basically all of the top players is, instead of coming kind of over the top and letting the hands come out away from their body, letting the club come out away from their body, again coming down steep into the ball and then having to open up, kind of fillet open the face and add loft to it. The flattening of the shaft should happen as soon as we start down. So as we start this downswing, what we want to have happening here, you can imagine that if I draw a line from the hosel of my club up through my right elbow, that's my swing plane line, my elbow plane. As I go to the top of the swing, I'm going to be slightly above that. And then as I start down, I want my hands to start to shallow out. I want the club to shallow out inside of this elbow plane. And at the same time, I'm going to be